Welcome to Sports Buds Hockey Podcast, where two friends come together to discuss all things hockey and where everyone's opinion is appreciated. Please welcome your hosts, Merrick Zemp and Collin Simpson.
Hello and welcome back to Season 3, Episode 9 of Sports Buds Hockey Podcast. My name is Merrick Zemp, and with me, as always, is Collin Simpson. How are you doing tonight, Simps?
Doing great, Matt. How about yourself?
Good, very good. We're halfway through the season. I think things have started to shake out just like we thought. A little bit closer, a little bit better. So why don't we take a few minutes tonight to just go over where our teams are sitting. We're right around the halfway mark, I think, for everybody. I think everybody's played 41 now. So we can touch base on both teams and are they living up to our expectations? Are they delivering what we expect? I mean, I don't know. What are your first thoughts?
Well, I guess we can start with let's start with the Oilers. Obviously,
Near the top of the standings, easier to find, obviously.
True.
Good, firm playoff spot. Yeah, no, good call.
Despite the beginning of the season where, they had a really slow start, they've done it before. It's been talked about before where they've had to find a groove, and I believe they kind of have now in their last 10. I think they're 7-2-1. There was a bit of spell with McDavid out for a few games, but it didn't seem to matter because Leon Draisaitl and some other guys stepped up and have continued to, even when he's been back. So I think that's really helped lead them into a record of where they're sitting second place, I think, right now in the Pacific.
They are, and actually they are 7-2-1 in their last 10, but they are between the real tough part with Edmonton is, of course, like you said, the terrible starts the last 2 years, and I mean it was brutal yet again. A lot of tough games to watch. But once they got going and once they moved forward and started, like you said, found the groove, the power play started going a little better. The penalty kill's been much better. It really has turned it on ever since. I think they said it was the start of November, so the last 2.5 months, they've been right up there. Best points percentage since start of November. The only problem for them, and surprisingly maybe I think, is that the number 2 and number 3 teams overall in that same stretch have been Vegas and Los Angeles. So, if everybody else, if it had been 500 hockey for Vegas and LA, they'd probably have a 10-point lead right now. But instead, they dug themselves a hole and they've been playing unreal hockey just to get back to where they are now, which is second in the Pacific.
Which, again, is not unlike last year. Obviously, they went on that, undefeated in 17 or 19?
16. 17 is the record.
You know what I mean? So same kind of concept, obviously not fully undefeated, but, still winning, I feel like 80% of your games.
Oh, yeah.
And like you said, if you don't start out poorly, then, because you really don't want to lose home ice, at least. That's the minimum, right? Mm-hmm. If you're going to play LA again, that's how you're lined up, and we'll see how that goes. But, like, the one thing you don't want to do is keep having these bad starts, because it's like, I get it. You play well the rest of the way, and you're guaranteeing yourself in the playoffs. And obviously they were one game away last year, so starting bad last year didn't affect them. But there could be a time where it does bite you when you just don't get that extra home game in a 7-game series and you got to go on the road. So hopefully they're able to kind of dig themselves out of that and keep this roll going. They're not far behind Vegas, obviously, so that could flip. They could easily take first place, but at the minimum, you're going to have to make sure you at least stay into second, so as to not have that beginning cost you the home ice advantage to the playoffs.
Well, and you look at that, you've got Vegas is, about 4 points ahead right now. Winnipeg is right there too. These are teams that are really catchable for the conference, right? Nobody would have expected as Winnipeg just roared out of the gates. Minnesota came out flying, all that stuff. Nobody would have really expected that they're kind of all in the mix at this point. You've got a lot of teams that are within, 4 points of each other. So getting that conference, I think you look at this side and getting out of the conference. So being able, like you said, to have home ice advantage all the way through and right through into the conference finals is could be a really big thing.
Well, as you said, when you're talking about those 6 teams, and that's how close it is the top 3 teams in each division here are within 4 points, both ends, right? You go as high as 61 and low as 53. So 2-game swings in any one of these teams can move you around in the top 6 really fast. So you could either get in full home ice, get the President's Trophy, or you could finish without home ice and third in your division, right? So it's still close enough where you can't let your foot off the pedal. That's for sure, I think, going down the stretch. And I think as long as there's no major injuries, then I think that they are kind of running on all cylinders right now. And as you spoke about earlier, when the power play's doing well and the special teams are there, and if they have everybody in, I don't see them ever going much less than a 65 to 70% win percentage the rest of the way.
Well, and the thing is, they're not just sitting on it. You've had times in the past where your power play's going, so you just roll out the same power play every time. And I mean, they still do that part, but you also roll out the same lines because the lines are going good. Okay, put McDavid and Draisaitl together and just make that happen. And they get 4 points each and you win 4-3. And it's, that's kind of the game and how it works. They're changing lines. They're mixing things up. Knobloch is very much trying to make sure that they're ready for the playoffs. And if somebody goes down with an injury, and all of a sudden Nugent Hopkins is going to be your third line center and you're going to put somebody else on the left wing, they're making sure somebody's been there, somebody's prepared, somebody's played some games, had some time. And, this strategy is for them to go deep and really be able to cover their bases no matter what happens. So it's to be winning like this and still juggling the lines and trying to work things out a little bit, I think is really good for them and for the playoffs.
And then the one big difference they also have going into this year, going towards the playoffs, is they actually have an insurance chip, which is the, whatever you want to call it, the Kucherov, the Mark Stone, whatever you want to call it. But they got the Evander Kane play in which they, if there is an injury, which is, again, what I see is the only thing that could really derail them, is they have the ability to, move a couple of picks out to bring in a guy to cover that person, and they can still fit them under the cap and have Kane back for the playoffs, right? So that wasn't the ability last year. If you did lose a guy just before the trade deadline or after the trade deadline or somewhere in there, you were just you had nobody with enough depth to cover them. But that's just a bit of an insurance this time.
Well, as it gets closer, if Kane can't get back until bare minimum the playoffs, then that opens up his long-term injury slot for $5.5 million. So that would make it so that by that point in the season, they could literally rent anybody. There'd be no salary cap issues with anything. They're doing what they can, they're saving money where they can. They're doing all that anyway to be able to bring people in. But yeah, at this point, really, you could say that if that does happen, which he is still injured and he just had another surgery, so he may end up being out close to the playoffs or something like that. Yeah, they'll be able to do anything they want at that point. But you start to wonder, yeah, they want a defenseman. Yeah, maybe another backup goalie or maybe another forward or whatever. But at what point do you stop messing around with the lines and stop messing with the chemistry? And you just say, you know what, this is the team that's going to go to the end.
But that's the thing. Like, first off, he was never coming back. They're going to do the same thing that every other team is going to use that loophole. I don't care if Evander Kane was skating, 1,000 lengths of the ice yesterday. He's still not coming back. But the thing is, I get what you're saying about not messing with chemistry. But at that point, you could literally bring in a guy and just healthy scratch him. If you don't want to get him into the lineup and go, well, who moves out or who's playing with who now? And you don't even have to do that. You could literally healthy scratch a guy and be like, you're just sitting here in case an injury happens. Take your money, sit there and relax. Why would you not? Because if what happens is if you don't use it and an injury happens and you don't win the cup, you had it at your disposal.
I like the way you think you have to say it. You're just saying if for all that. And yet you're so determined. You think that there's some sort of shenanigans going on?
Well, of course there is, but that's every team's trying to do it now. Any team that can do it will do it now. So it's not like I'm picking at any team. This is now the norm. This is happening on every team every year, the minute you can. Only mainly on teams that are deeper. Yeah. Because if you're not a good enough team, you are not going to win enough games with them without them back. You need to get them back fast. Yeah. But these teams that are really deep, like Vegas, Edmonton, Tampa Bay, back when they were doing it with Kucherov, these are teams that they knew they were already getting playoff bound. It's something you do. If you're sitting teetering, as we maybe segue to the Flames, if you're a team that's on the cusp, it's a gamble you can't take because you can't have an asset sitting and not
if that's
playing.
your goal. Right.
What do you
So,
mean?
I mean, I think at this point we can agree that the Oilers are where we expected them to be.
Correct.
In the mix, fighting it out for the Pacific, fighting it out for the Western Conference, and maybe even fighting it out for the President's Trophy if it comes down to that. But they're kind of in the mix for that. So let's talk about it, as you said, segue into the Flames. So is that your goal, right? For a team like the Flames, would you want to bring the guy back and try to squeak your way into the playoffs?
Well, and that's the problem right now with Calgary. They're right in the middle of an identity crisis, right? They started out with that great start that no one expected. Obviously, they've tailored back down to a little more reality, but not to the reality we expected. I expected a reality of just completely like 20%, 30% wins, and we are 10, 15 points out of a playoff spot looking to see what we get in the top 10 for a pick. And unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it as a fan, like you want to see your team win. But if you're part of the rebuild team like I am, then you're wanting to see them do worse. You still want to see some of the young players like we've seen so far. Connor Zary up until this injury, which is a big difference maker right now. He's been one of their best players. Dustin Wolf's been lights out. Everyone kind of expected he would eventually be that guy. He's been so good at every level. So it's great to see these guys develop. But you're watching a guy like Jonathan Huberdeau, who we've been so mad at for so many years. He's got 18 goals and 18 assists in half a season. Now, yeah, that's only 60 some odd points compared to the 115 points he got his career year. But if he still puts up 30 goals or 36 goals, he's got a career year in goals. And so the team itself is actually doing way better than I expected. And now they're sitting in the last wildcard spot. And now Craig Conroy has the tough decisions as we get further into this going, just as you said, for that one scenario, it's also, are you a buyer? Are you a seller? The biggest concern I have for them is, and what they haven't used yet, which they need to start looking at one way or the other, is the $22 million in salary cap they're saving right now. So if you're going for it and say to yourself, we want to make the playoffs, why are we not out getting people into that money? Even if they're on an expiring contract, you could pick up a big contract for an expiring contract and it walks off your books at the end of the year, so it doesn't really affect your rebuild. Or how do we not got a couple extra first round picks or a couple of second round picks eating up someone else's salary? I get Murray Edwards doesn't want to lose $20 million. I get that. But they've spent up to the cap almost every other year I've known. So that $20 million has to pick one way or the other. And I feel like they're sitting on their hands, and maybe rightfully so. Maybe it's just what they want out there is not happening. But they have to make a decision at some point. Are we good enough to go for it? Or do we save the money, sell guys, and expect the next couple of years to be bad?
In reality, above them, you've got, for in the Western Conference, right, guys that could end up slipping. You've got Winnipeg, Minnesota, Dallas. They're pretty comfortable. They're all going to stay where they are. Vegas and Edmonton, pretty comfortable. Same thing. You got LA in there who, I always write them off, but they always seem to be there, right? You've got Colorado above them. So, I mean, in reality, you got 7 spots that are somewhat sewed up that you would expect to be right where they are. Then you've got the Flames stuck there in number 8. You've got Vancouver, St. Louis, Utah, Anaheim. I mean, I don't think anybody's going any further than maybe Utah as a team that might be willing to catch up or might be able to catch up. And they're 6 points back. But, Vancouver, St. Louis, Utah, after that, I don't think anybody's expecting Anaheim to really turn it on, or Seattle, San Jose. All those are disappeared. So maybe you've got 3 teams that want to fight it out. I haven't seen much from St. Louis that tells me they're going to push there. Utah doesn't seem like they wanted to. They kind of seem like they are, but they're just not really. So, yeah, I don't know if anybody's going to put that much of a fight up for it. They may get in there not by attrition. They got to win and do well, but nobody's running away with it. Everybody thought Vancouver was going to build on last year's, but it's nothing but turmoil. Maybe if they do make the big trade they're going to make or whatever, maybe that'll turn them around and they'll jump back in there and be right in the fray with everybody else. But as of right now, it doesn't seem like that's likely. So they may get in there just by playing decent hockey, right? Without having to make trades, without having to do all that stuff, they may still end up in that spot.
They literally, in my opinion, and this is what makes it so tough, is Vancouver's a way better team. Plain and simple. They're battling turmoil. Demko's been out almost the entire season, including a bunch of last year's playoffs. Ronek's been out for a while. Hughes has had injuries. And then you've got the Pedersen and Miller debacle.
Both of them have had time off too.
So like if they get that sorted out, move one of those guys and get someone else back in and start to build chemistry, the talent level is so much higher from that team. But at the end of the day, you're up a point, even in games. You just have to have a better record than them, ignoring everybody else in the whole league. Just have a better record than them. I don't see St. Louis and Utah pushing. So I believe that. But again, the worst case scenario, you're sitting there going, we can make the playoffs and most likely just get pumped by some team 4 games straight. Or the worst thing that could have happened to us in the entire season is finish 9th. Right? So the risk reward is so horrible. The reward is just to squeeze into the playoffs and get a couple hockey games in. But the risk is be the worst thing for a rebuild possible you can possibly do. So I don't know.
Like the 17th overall pick.
Yeah, like, so what's the point? You know what I mean? Like the season becomes the worst thing you could have done. You could have just not showed up and done better. So I don't know. I'm kind of torn. Like obviously it'd be great to see them get in at this point if you're not going to get a high pick.
Well, and that's it. You look at them; they're almost 20 points ahead of Chicago. Like they're not fighting for first overall.
Mm-hmm.
The other conference, they're a dozen points ahead of the Sabres, who are bottom of the other conference. Like they're not going for that level.
The good news is I'm not keen on Schaefer as a first overall pick. If you find they get a first overall pick compared to the next year being McKenna and probably whatever the next year or two after that Landon kid. So I'd rather one of them. So if we're going to tank in some other years, it'd be great. But I just feel like once you kind of get near the playoffs and trying to get in, I feel like you've just created that atmosphere of not tank. Hey, next year, let's what we should do. Let's go for it again, guys. Look how close we got to the playoffs last time. Let's go for it. And it's just, again,
if you're
goes
9th
back
or
to the
10th.
identity. What are you? Are you a rebuild or are you not? You can't keep playing this thing. You can't be on both sides of the fence and then get anywhere. You will be mediocre for many, many years, like the Maple Leafs used to do for a long time when they'd finish 10th, 9th, 10th. No picks, no playoffs. And we're falling into that trap again. And we've done it for a while, but I don't know. So we're doing better than we thought. Obviously, it's not where I thought it'd be right now. I thought we'd be talking about, are we getting anywhere in the top 8 pick? Can we package some guys and get higher up? Maybe a couple of top 10s and start to rebuild. But as it stands now, a lot of older veteran guys having great years and a goaltender standing on his head. Who knows? I guess we'll see.
I mean, it would be great. It'd be great for them to end up there, and then obviously the Oilers to get up top to make sure that those 4 games are quick for you. I mean, they'll feel long. They'll feel like long games, but yeah, no, it's a hard spot to be in, and I mean, it's not like they had the drought. You know, as an Oilers fan, we went through a long period where there was no playoff games. There was no hinting at playoff games, and by midway of the season, you were already counting out for next year. So it is nice to see them, doing better. But I mean, even that, they're -10 on their goal differential. They're getting pumped once in a while, that kind of thing. They're better. The record's better than I expected. 21-14 is better than I thought they would be, and definitely better than I thought at this point in the season. Like you said, they started hot, but then I thought they went down to around the 500 mark kind of thing, and maybe they've won a few more games since. But yeah, just it's interesting. I mean, considering the last time we talked about these two teams, I'm pretty sure Edmonton might have even been behind Calgary in the standings, but we kind of knew which way they were headed. At that point already, Calgary was coming down and Edmonton was going up, and they were meeting in the middle at one point and then kind of went from there. So, no, I think, you know what? Edmonton, I think, is where we want them to be, hopefully moving up a little more. I'd love to see them actually take a division title. You just don't see it very often, it seems, for Canadian teams anymore, so it'd be nice to see that. And then, yeah, Calgary. I mean, I'm just as torn as you are. I'd like to see them get pumped by somebody in the playoffs, but it's also nice to watch them miss out altogether. So it's really a coin toss for me. I don't know which one I like more. I do love that 17th overall pick for them, though. Really make sure they don't get any better for next year, but there's always a chance.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, maybe it'll be a diamond in the rough, but not the prototypical way to do a rebuild, that's for sure.
No, but you know what? When you look at the Flames, they've got a lot of young guys, and in reality, they're starting to actually bring them in, and you're starting to see so many more of them on the ice. We've gone to a couple games ourselves, and being able to see that and see those guys out there, you're half rebuilding, half you're almost maybe doing it a better way, so that as the Huberto goes down to the second line, you've got people to replace him, and you've got like that kind of thing, and maybe that will actually work out for them to create a team in a couple years. But I mean, it's just you have to wait and see.
Yeah, it's just not a quick fix like a lot of the time when you're getting generational talents, right? And you're not guaranteed those type guys are always going to be there. You're not getting number one most of the time. So even if you are getting a third and fourth, you're getting decent players.
They get used to getting number ones lots.
Yeah,
I don't think it's that big a deal.
One team can do it somehow, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Throw a few out in the garbage too after that. But
well, true story. All right, well, we'll wrap it up there. Great job, Simps. We'll come back. We'll do a good playoff preview here in the next week or so, and just really, really discuss who's in, who's out, what we think of the whole team, not just ours, and of the whole league and kind of what's coming up. We're also looking forward to the Four Nations. That's coming up. We're going to do some more previews, and then we'll be covering the games for that as well. Simps, I want to thank you. Great job tonight. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's good to catch up and see where our teams are at. Obviously, like you said, we'll get into some predictions on where we feel people are actually going to land, and maybe we'll know a little bit more from there and see how close we are, and if we're just hoping and not actually analyzing correctly.
Hey, even the best just throw a little bit of hope into the wind sometimes. So I want to thank everybody for listening. So don't forget, if you want a little bit more information or to find more of our podcasts, you go to www.sportsbuds.com. And we also have, we're also available on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, and anywhere else you might get your podcasts. So don't forget to download those, have a listen, and don't forget to refer them as well. So I want to thank everybody for listening. We love doing this for you guys. And don't forget, make a comment on the Facebook page. We know Simpson's wrong. It's just trying to figure out which way to tell him.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. We'll catch you next time.
All right. Thank you very much.